I wanted to respond to your video where you talked about why you are an atheist. Now, before I go any further, I have to say that I am not an atheist. In fact, not only am I a Christian, I am a Catholic. Now, I have to also say that I'm not an atheist for a lot of reasons. And you're going to say I'm not an atheist because I am naive and clinging to some kind of naivete. No, I'm going to tell you the real reason why I am not an atheist. I'm not an atheist because atheism makes no logical sense to me. Now, let's go explain that. What your argument is basically that all that exists in the universe is perceivable by the human, and God, who is not perceivable by the human, cannot exist for exactly that reason. For example, no matter what exists in the universe, we, through science, are able to test the reality or non-reality of its existence. And obviously, science cannot test the reality nor non-reality of God's existence. Therefore, we can assume that God doesn't exist for that reason. Here's my problem with that argument. The argument, which very good argument in science, by the way, is not scientific because science makes it very clear that science cannot determine the existence or non-existence of God. But the argument is based on the reality that all things in the universe are made from atoms and molecules and energy, matter and energy. And because of that, everything in the universe can be perceivable within that context. That means essentially that everything in the universe is perceivable by the human, which is the scientific position you cited. So it's not literally perceivable, but can be. So, for example, if I was on some planet that was outside the star Alpha Centauri, maybe an orbit around Alpha Centauri, and I had the right kind of tools, regardless of what was on that planet, regardless of how foreign it would be to what we have on this planet, I would be able to, if I had the right tools, perceive it, because ultimately it would still be the same thing we have on this planet, which is something made of matter and energy. There you go. And that is the position. And therefore, God can't possibly exist because no matter where I go, anywhere in the universe, there's no tool that I can get that's going to show me how to perceive God. And because there's no tool that I can get that'll show me how to perceive God, God therefore can't possibly exist. Here's my problem with that argument, though. The argument defines all that exists in the universe as being within the context of what humans can perceive. And from a scientific perspective, I don't agree with that. And it is none other than a group of sciences that teach me that. And those are the sciences of evolution. Now, before I go any further, I have to remind you that as a Catholic, I believe differently than a fundamentalist. A fundamentalist Christian, for example, believes in faith over reason. A fundamentalist atheist believes in reason to the exclusion of faith. But I'm a Catholic. Catholics believe in faith and reason together. And therefore, Catholics embrace science, and yes, Catholics even embrace the sciences of evolution. Oh, there are some Catholics that don't, but when you want to talk about the official position of what we believe, we do. Okay? In fact, it is not Catholic teaching that the first 3 chapters of Genesis are mechanistic explanations of how the world began. You see, the real issue with evolution is it teaches that every single creature only is able to perceive in the ability that evolution gave to it in order to survive. That means that all that exists in the universe is not by default perceivable by any particular creature, only if that creature needs to perceive all that exists in the universe in order to survive. And therefore, it is quite possible that there are things that exist in the universe that are not, in fact, perceivable by the human and may not, in fact, be made of matter and energy. In fact, if there are things that are not made of matter and energy, they are not perceivable by the human. That simple. Now, Jesus made an interesting point about that, because what he said was God is spirit. What that means is God is not matter nor energy. God is spirit. What is spirit? I don't know. What I do know is if there is such a thing as spirit, and that thing, such a thing as spirit, is not matter or energy, that which is of spirit is not perceivable by the human. Now, you're going to turn around and say, well, I don't believe in spirit. I don't care if you do or not. My question is, does it exist? And can you prove or disprove its existence? In fact, can you prove or disprove anything in the universe that is not perceivable by the human? That's the question that really defines whether or not you are a believer or not. You see, the atheist will say, no, there's nothing in the world that exists that is not perceivable by a human. And the believer will say, yes, there is. And that simple statement is the difference between an atheist and a believer, and nothing else. And therefore, that simple statement is really the difference between how we understand our world and how we understand science. So when we look at that, to that level, we can see that there is really a different issue here. And the issue is, are there realities in the universe that are not perceivable by the human? Now I'm going to go another step with that. I want you to imagine this reality. If there is such a thing as evolution, which I do believe, and Jesus is who he says he is, when he was on earth teaching, he taught knowing that evolution exists. And if you go back and read the New Testament, and you read it with the understanding that there are realities in this world that are not perceivable by you and I at this particular point, you will find the teachings in the gospel to a more profound level than you would if you just kind of look at it as teaching by some person in whom you do not believe. Don't worry, you will not be corrupted out of your atheism if you read the Bible that way. Just go look at it. Just go with the understanding, what if this person understood reality in a different way than the people to whom he's speaking? And when you read the Bible that way, especially the Gospels, even the New Testament, it comes across quite different. Now, one of your concerns was that religion is very manipulative. Okay. The real issue is that humans can be manipulative. Can religion be manipulative? So can science. And the answer to both questions is, of course. Let me give you an example. Do you know there's a movement right now to create designer human beings that would have higher IQs than those that just are born naturally? Now, I want you to think about that for a second, because obviously, it's going to cost money to do that. And if you have more money to be able to design your own human being, and including a child that has 30 points more of an IQ than someone who can't afford that, then you are going to guarantee that your children are the dominators of the world, and those who do not have the money to do that are their servants. And that comes right from science. There are countless issues in the past, especially during Holocaust, where they found scientists were actively involved in the execution processes, and none of the scientists stood up and said, why are we doing this? Indeed, one of the big questions from World War II that happened after the drop of the bomb on Hiroshima and Nagasaki, Nagasaki being the Catholic area of Japan, was simply this. If our reason for getting the bomb was to defeat the Germans, and we had already defeated the Germans, why did we continue with the bomb? And so we go to the next step. And the next step is realizing that both religion and science can be manipulative. When you have science without faith, you have the opportunity for the Holocaust. When you have faith without science, you have the opportunity for the Inquisition. The issue is not faith or science. The issue is faith and science. And as a Catholic, I believe in both, not one or the other.